All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Post-Match Live. After a scintillating evening of Champions League action, I've been trying to calm myself a little bit so that we're not getting too excited for this Facebook Live thing. Gotta maintain our usual calm sense of even demeanor, but it's hard. It's hard when Batshuayi scores a 94th minute. Tremendous winning goal after a tremendous team move that you thought was gonna break or get whistled on before it had a chance to materialize into a winner. Everybody expected Willian to play that final free kick into the box and just go for the header, but we had better ideas. We had the idea to play it around a bit and then play it around a bit some more and play out to the wing. And then play back to the middle, and then Conte found Bakayoko with who actually pulled off a really nice flick that I think we're all going to forget about in the end. But really nice flick out to Alonso, who crossed with his weaker foot, and there was Batshuayi, the man, the hero we all deserve and need. And yeah, that's a good call. I should have used Diego Costa's face in hand, face palm picture at the end there. That probably summed up the game. Although Torres had a nice dejected look to him too, which still remember those Torres days. So that kind of tickled a bit of that happy Schadenfreude feeling. But yeah, nothing like Diego Costa there in his sitting there in the nice director's box and watching his old new team lose to his old team in the most excellent fashion. Taking back the comment about Batshuayi being a flat track bully, that's right. Although, in fairness, Batshuayi didn't really do much in his 10 minutes, other than score the winner. But it's the goals that count. Maun says the first English club to beat Atlético on Spanish soil. Well, it's only the second time in 24 games that Atlético have lost at home in the Champions League under Diego Simeone, and that certainly is a result to be celebrated. And it wasn't even a lucky win. I think if Atletico pulls off this win, we'll say that they got a lucky win. I mean, Chelsea were the better team, for whatever that word is worth in sports. But Chelsea were the better team all day. The vast majority of shots were to Chelsea. We had the better and more possession. We pushed the issue. Atletico were looking to counter, which is fine. Chelsea we've won our fair share of things on the counter, but it's going away from home in supposedly this not supposedly, but this really tough place to play. A 2-1 win for Chelsea is pretty ridiculously amazing in the end. And above all, it's 2 wins for Chelsea from 2 games in the Champions League, which puts us firmly in the driver's seat for qualification in the knockout round. We need it's Roma up next, I think, back to back. So possibly not 2 wins there, but after today's performance, if we play like we played today, it's a cliche as it goes. But if we play like we played today, there's few teams that could beat us. Lock down the midfield, very efficient, very very good attack with Morata and Hazard. The 3 in the middle, a bit somewhat fluid, somewhat not so fluid, depending on which side we're looking at. But solid in the back, other than the little thing with David Luiz pulling the man down in the box. But it's one of those where a play that happens dozens of times in a game, and the one time the referee decides to call it is on David Luiz. In fairness, it wasn't like he wasn't trying to disguise it too much. It was right in front of the ref, and it was pretty obvious that he was holding back. I think it was Lucas Hernandez. But it's not like Lucas just, let it go like Morata did 10 minutes prior. Lucas was on the ground. He put both his arms up, looked despairingly at the referee. But, Atletico were pretty good at that all day. Bought several fouls, pretty soft fouls. But, you gotta play the game, I guess, is the name of the game. So, yeah, whew. Pretty good, I'd want to say. So we got everyone's attention. I would think so. That said, this game for whatever reason was not exactly given the wide distribution. Instead, most viewers were treated to Manchester United blowing up Spartak in Moscow. PSG and Bayern were playing, so that got pretty big top billing. For whatever reason, this game just kind of was like, nobody cares about Atletico and Chelsea, even though, over the past decade or so, two of the more successful teams in Europe, if we want to look at it objectively. Whatever, people who got to watch it were treated to certainly an excellent performance from Chelsea. Oh, sorry, CSK Moscow. Well, excuse me, the wrong Moscow team. There's so many of them. So whoever did get to watch it were certainly treated to an excellent display from Chelsea. As well go over the lineups, since seems like a decent segue. We were all expecting a 3-5-2, I think, and a 3-5-2 is exactly what we got. This seems to be our big game formation, especially away from home. It's what we played against Spurs. It's what we played against Leicester. Obviously, Leicester not exactly on the same level as Spurs or Atletico, but it's definitely the what we saw work well against Arsenal as well, even at home. A back three, probably people would have preferred Rudiger over Cahill, but Cahill got the start as the captain. David Luiz made his return from suspension, or he's suspended in England and in domestic games. He's not suspended in European games. So David Luiz made his return to the lineup. Excuse me. And Cesar Azpilicueta, as always, was on the right side of the back three. And then we had Alonso and Moses as our wing backs, and then a midfield trio of Fabregas, Bakayoko, and Conte. And their arrangement kind of changed throughout the game. The first 20 minutes or so, I'll remember it. It's CSK for now and forever. The first 20 minutes, Bakayoko was most definitely the anchoring midfielder, so the central of the three playing the deepest. Fabregas kept on the left, and Conte was on the right. And Conte was almost playing in the ideal role that we would have imagined for somebody like Ramirez, essentially playing a box-to-box and going out to the right wing a fair amount. In fact, I'm looking at a couple formations here, and Conte is actually listed as our right-sided forward, which obviously was not the case. He was the fifth midfielder, but first 20 minutes, Conte was most definitely the most attacking of the three midfielders, which is not something we've seen before, and perhaps an indication of Conte's growing abilities as coached by Antonio Conte. And then as the game wore on, Conte and Bakayoko kind of switched around. I think Bakayoko got tired towards the end, and we've seen that happen before. There was a couple of lazy plays from him, a couple of lazy fouls, including possibly where if the referee decides to screw us, he would have called that foul on Torres in the box. But fortunately he didn't. And that's one of the reasons I think eventually Conte made the change where he took off Fabregas and put on Christensen. And Christensen actually went to play the David Luiz role in the middle of the defense, and David Luiz got pushed into midfield, as against Spurs, to play that anchor role behind Conte and Bakayoko. So it's very we see definitely seeing just in this one game how having more midfield options than just the two players last season, when we insisted on playing two players all the time, how that can help you adjust to different situations in the game. and show different looks to the opposition where they possibly won't be able to deal with it. And then the front two were Morata, as usual, as the man can't stop scoring, so you got to play him. And Eden Hazard making his first real start. He started against Nottingham Forest, but come on, that doesn't really count. So here's Hazard making his return in a big game, and he certainly seemed motivated right from the beginning. Full of running, full of invention, hitting the post, creating shots. Morata had a couple early chances where he pulled the ball just wide of the far post. Then we kind of settled in a little bit. There was a bit of a more even play, but even throughout the first half, as Chelsea were pressing the issue and looking for something more than just a 0-0 draw, which, you know, it's the last time we came to Madrid was the 0-0 draw was exactly what we were looking for, and it was exactly what we got. We couldn't quite finish the job at home, of course, and that was in 2014 under Mourinho when Chelsea lost 3-1 at Stamford Bridge. So yeah, it's certainly a refreshing change, not even so much in terms of the result, but just the attitude and the approach to the game. I'm sure Conte, you know, many people will call Conte a defensive coach from here, just as before. Mourinho, if nobody else, but you know, we quite clearly were not set out just to defend and hope for the draw here. It's you know, such as Matt saying, strongly think of a better performance in Europe for years, including Munich. I mean, yeah, it's especially as an away performance against a top team, who probably many would have thought would have won, just as their excellent home record would lead you to believe. You know, this is the first time. Was it only the second time, as we were saying earlier? They've lost under Simeone at home in the Champions League. The first one was to Benfica some years ago. So it's yeah, it's certainly a day to be proud of, not just of the win, but the way we got the win. And I mean, few things feel better than a 94th minute winner. But man, I still can't believe we passed the ball around instead of just pumping the ball into the box, as what everybody was expecting. And we just decided, nope, we're gonna make this count, and we're gonna work the ball around and get Batshuayi his goal. Comments about Chelsea playing as a unit, and yeah, we definitely saw that a lot. Cahill, you know, still some questions about Cahill and build up and possession and all that, and he quite clearly doesn't want to hit the ball with his left foot at all. So that's you know, if other teams clue in on that, that's a disadvantage for us. But otherwise, a strong performance from Cahill, of course. Closing down his man all the time. He made the one I do recall specifically was towards the end when he nicked the ball from Griezmann when Christensen was covering. That was a good play from Cahill. You know, and he's always a threat on set pieces as well, as is Marcus Alonso. So even if nothing else, those are always positive contributions from those two. Yeah, I think, you know, perhaps the only fault we'll hear of from this game is David Luiz's silly penalty that he gave away, and you know, there's few things to. It's hard to question that as a call in isolation, because he quite clearly pulled his man, and not just once, but Lucas ran around him, and Luiz just kept hold of his shirt. So I mean, it's a pretty lazy play from David Luiz, and justifiably so. He got called on it. The problem is, of course, that Alonso got wrestled to the ground by Godin, I want to say. Not earlier in the game, nothing was called there. Morata was also hugged. I think it was Koke who just had an arm around him. And maybe if Morata goes down, he gets the same call as Lucas did, but he didn't. So, you know, it's just one of those where it's frustrating that an inconsistency like that looked to have decided a game for a fairly long time. But in credit to Chelsea, we didn't let our heads drop at all. Came out in the second half to continue as in the first, if not even better. I think it was Chelsea had maybe like 53% of possession in the first half, and we were over 60 in the second half for most of the second half. And eventually the equalizer came. Of course, it was from the head of Alvaro Morata. When is it not a header from? Of course, last weekend's hat-trick was not a header from Morata, but really nice header from him actually. Hazard pulled wide. I think he was found. The secondary assist went to David Luiz for whatever that's worth. But really nice cross from Hazard from the left with his right foot, so curling towards the goal, which tends to freeze the goalkeeper because he doesn't know whether to come for it, whether he's going to get a touch. There were two players crashing. Alonso on the near post drawing Godin away, and that left Morata on Lucas. I want to say Morata beat his man to the ball and just got just enough on the ball with the tips of his frosted hair or whatever that is, the hair gel strong enough to guide that ball into the corner. Goalkeeper couldn't do anything about it, and that was on 60 minutes and seventh goal of the season now for Morata. I mean, what more can you ask for, right? It was interesting to see Morata's day overall being so much stronger against these defenders than we've seen him against English defenders, or English defenders in the Premier League. Maybe if not, they're all English. But yeah, it was interesting. Morata picking up, continuing his physical improvement and getting a good result from it today. Certainly. We saw him far less on the ground and much more in the air. The couple times he knocked his, shoulder to shoulder, knocked his own defender down. This is good stuff from Morata, and he certainly deserved his goal and deserved his last 10 minutes of rest. And looked like we did a shift change basically for the last 10 minutes. Took off Morata and Hazard, brought on the second unit with Batshuayi and Willian, and eventually that paid dividends too. So everything that was touched today, other than David Luiz touching the man he was supposed to mark on the corner, turned to gold. What about Costa? Did you see Costa on the bench? No, he wasn't on the bench. He was in the director's box because Costa is not allowed to be on the bench because he's not registered to play for Atlético. But yes, and it's a missed opportunity because I chose to put Conte celebrating Morata's goal, which was one of the more awkward celebrations from Conte and Morata. They didn't quite know what to do when they ran towards each other. They kind of did the jump up chest bump, but it wasn't quite practiced yet. So room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. Gotta work on those celebrations. But yeah, Costa watching from the director's box with his head in his hand. That was the perfect ending image, and I really should have used that image instead of this side over here, the Conte. That's all right. We're keeping it positive. That's what we're all about here. Oh man, so good, so good. The presence of many Spanish players in Chelsea team gave him confidence. Well, certainly, at some point they were mentioning on the telecast that Chelsea actually had more Spanish players on the team than Atlético. But it's one of those weird situations where the Premier League is not really defined by one nation anymore. It's not like it's an English league anymore or whatever. It's the top international league. And it's similar for the top teams in Spain. It's just what it is, I suppose. But yeah, Courtois was basically homecoming for Courtois because he loves Spain, as we all know. So he came home, sort of his adopted home. I think Fabregas was the one who joked that Courtois is an honorary Spaniard. So we can even count him. But certainly Fabregas, who played for La Liga quite a bit. Morata, obviously, born in Madrid and came up through Atletico's big rivals, so he got a few whistles. Marcos Alonso, who has ties to basically all the big Spanish teams, also being from Madrid, but then I guess Alonso's father or grandfather was actually a manager at Atletico for a while and also played for them. So I mean that he's this is basically his home ground. And then there's Azpilicueta, who hasn't played in Spain for quite a while, but he is Spanish as well. So there you go. We started with the 4 Spaniards, and Atletico started with only 3. But then they evened it out when they brought on old Torres. Torres predictably didn't really do much other than one audacious flick and then one shot from like 40 yards out, which I was glad that he took that shot because it was a 3-on-3 break, and he could have put us in a bit of a bother if he just passes to either side, but he went for glory, tried his luck from like 40 yards out, so thanks for that, Fernando. That Hazard shot rattling the woodwork had potential to be a great goal, says Siddharth. At last, the woodwork. Yeah, it was a deflected shot, but still had so much power, and it just really looked like it was going to just curl in on the inside of the post, but no luck there for Hazard. But he did get his assist, and I thought he played very well. Finally, getting a start in a true meaningful game. And certainly, before getting a little tired, I guess he got tired towards the end of the game. But first half, excellent first half, and then before he got tired, very well played for Eden Hazard back in the lineup. Unused subs for Chelsea today: Caballero, Rudiger, Pedro. Pedro apparently had a bit of a knock, but he still was good enough to make the bench, and Costa was there as well. That away kit is gorgeous, says Darwin. Yeah, the opinions seem to be split a little bit on the away kit, although it's not a 50-50. It's like I'd say 70-30. I think most people seem to like the design and in person or whatever on television it looks good. I personally like the cyan accent. I didn't like it at all when I was looking at it in pictures, but in action it looks good. What I didn't like at all is the collar, and the collar I think is very bad. It's just it needs a bit more. It seems a bit too open, too wide, too flimsy. At least on the players' version, it looked like there was like kind of peeling away from their body. Just kind of an odd look, like it was an unfinished garment. But I'm sure people will buy it, right? It's what it's here for. First instance of the third kit being used today by both the first team and the under-19s. The under-19s won 3-1 earlier today, so they made it 2 wins from 2, just like the first team. So they're well on their way to the youth league knockout rounds as well. Who will rest this weekend versus Manchester City? Same 11, or will there be changes? And thoughts on 3-5-2 versus 3-4-3? I really liked how we looked in the 3-5-2 today. That said, I would expect us to go back to the 3-4-3, and we can switch. Now that we have 2 working formations, we can essentially switch between them as we need to based on the situation. And the one thing I think we can definitely expect is Manchester City not approaching the game on Saturday the same way Atletico approached their game, even though City will be away and Atletico were home today. Atletico were more than happy to sit back, stay compact, counter, especially through Griezmann. City, I don't know what I would do, but the world might end if Pep Guardiola shows up on Saturday and puts 10 men behind the ball and says, "Come break us down, and we're gonna hit you on the counter." City I think will look to play the same way Guardiola always plays. In which case, the 3-4-3 is probably the way to go. Like somebody was saying, yeah, Pedro, certainly somebody who can take advantage of a high line and with runs in behind. So I would say Hazard, Morata, and Pedro to start, and the front line. Willian can come on later. I would possibly not be surprised if Fabregas starts because he seems to, for whatever reason, get the start in big games like that. But I would, play Bakayoko and Conte, Moses, Alonso. If they're all fit and all ready to play, then I see no reason to change that midfield four, especially with a 2-week international break coming up after that. So now is the time to run yourself into the ground. That said, if Moses, who didn't seem to have as much of an impact today, if he gets dropped for Costa, that's fine. And then a back three, I would like to see Rudiger in there, but that's at this point, whatever we decide is fine. Obviously, Christensen is going to come back in because David Luiz is still suspended. Azpilicueta always plays, so then it's either Rudiger or Cahill. I'm fine with either. I'd say Rudiger should start just because he seems a little faster, a little quicker, and a little more aggressive, and that's possibly what we'll need against City's aggression. Too many discipline issues in Cahill and Luiz. I'm not so sure I really agree with that. I don't think Cahill is indisciplined at all. If anything, he is a little too disciplined and too careful. If we're going to accuse Cahill of anything in that regard. David Luiz is David Luiz, and I'm sure it won't be forgotten for a while that in one game he gets sent off for a little rush of blood to the head, and then in today he gives away the penalty. But I find it really tough to blame him only for a play or something that happens many times in a game, and in that one instance the referee decided to call it. It's a foul is a foul, and for sure David Luiz fouled his man. But if the same penalty gets given at the other end, then suddenly David Luiz doesn't look like the biggest fool in the world. A hair still won't help, so people will notice. But you take the good with the bad, I suppose. And it was definitely a lazy play from him. I'm not sure what he was thinking. Only he can tell you what he was thinking. But he was probably thinking, I do this all the time, and this one time I got caught. So, it is what it is. No harm, no foul, right? They were talking about, before the game, there was a feature on Chelsea TV where Didier Drogba sat down and drew these pictures of the 2012 Champions League final, and it's literally he's there sitting with a marker or a crayon or whatever it was, and he's drawing pictures of these with stick figures and stuff like that. But what was interesting was he was talking about when he scored the winning penalty, he didn't know what to do, but then he saw Peter Cech, so he ran to him because literally the most important player to that whole Champions League win was Peter Cech, and part of it, as Drogba was saying, was because he saved the penalty from Robin in the final. And the penalty that Didier Drogba gave away. So if, as Drogba was saying, it was that close between him being the hero that we all remember and him being the villain. People wouldn't forget 2008 for a long time when Didier got sent off for a sorta kind of slap on Vidic. If you watch that back, that's such a weak call too. So whatever. But it's fine margins at the top level of the game, and even for somebody like Didier, it's a fine margin between being the biggest villain and losing the game for Chelsea in the end, or winning it, and it's literally separated by maybe 15 minutes. So, it's small margins like that, and I think we can probably forgive David Luiz for both of these little lapses, as long as he doesn't really continue to make a habit of these. It'd be nice to not fall back into the patterns of this first go around at Chelsea, when every other game we have to talk about the latest little what should we call them, David Luiz things. Kim says, if we beat City on the weekend, is it safe to say we can no longer fly under the radar? Yeah, I think that might be a side effect of if Chelsea are able to beat Manchester City this weekend, which hopefully we will. I mean, after today, the confidence should certainly be there. If we beat them, I think we'll be back in a conversation for better or worse for the title. Of course, if we beat City and United win, then maybe it's then United will be crowned champions again for the second time already this season. It's amazing. They've already won the league twice. So good for them. Good for United and Jose Mourinho. One of these days, their schedule might actually turn somewhat tough, and then we'll see what United are made of. Cornelius says, Conte was a locomotive all over the place and effective. I really want to take a look at just like one of those heat map things, like where Conte's touches happened during the game, because he certainly seemed to play, especially early on, a lot more forward than he's ever played for Chelsea, and a lot more how should we say this, like impactful. Like he was a key part of the attack, even running, leading the counter or leading the charge up the right wing. It's pretty impressive stuff. I was saying earlier, it reminded me of an ideal performance for somebody like Ramirez, who in theory was always able to play the sort of midfield destroyer role, but then was also skilled enough to go forward and create an attack. So it's improvement and new looks for Conte, and thanks in part enabled by Bakayoko's deployment as the central midfielder of the three. So yeah, very, very good performance from Conte. I think a very good performance from everybody. I'm struggling to knock anybody other than the obvious error from David Luiz. Moses possibly a little too quiet, though. He was faced with Felipe Luis and Carrasco was very quiet, other than maybe one time he got a cross in, was it? Otherwise, Carrasco was very, very quiet. And kind of the same could be said for all of Atletico's players. Granted, I'm guessing some of that is down to their tactics, but the front, let's see. So Atletico are lined up in a sort of a 4-4-2, 4-3-3 hybrid, as Simeone always likes to play. And their front two of Griezmann and Correa were, Griezmann scored his penalty, but otherwise I'm not sure he even ever had a clean look at goal. Correa, I don't remember him doing much at all. Carrasco was kept quiet except for that one cross we were talking about earlier, or just now. The right winger, Saul, was probably their biggest threat, and maybe someone that had to do with Alonso pushing forward quite a bit. But a couple of long-range shots from Saul. We know we can hit him. We were probably a bit lucky that I think Gabi, who is the usual Atletico captain, had a bit of an injury, is my guess, because he didn't even play at all. Instead of him, this Thomas Partey was starting. I don't know much about him, unfortunately, at all. The other midfielder was Koke, who's obviously a very good player. And then the back four for Atletico was Felipe Luis, Lucas, Godin, the captain and the veteran, and Juan Fran on the right side. We might remember Juan Fran from the last time we played Atletico, when he absolutely destroyed Eden Hazard, who for whatever reason at the time was tasked with defensive responsibilities, which Conte is not foolish enough to really give to him. But Mourinho certainly was not happy with Hazard on that day, because he let Juan Fran in behind twice at least, and I think they both led to goals. So yeah, that was the changing of the times there, the changing of the roles. Hazard much more suited to the, I guess we can call it a free role. He was certainly wasn't just a left wing. He popped up here, there, everywhere, wherever he was needed. Bit of a second forward, shadow striker, left inside forward, whatever you want to call him. All sorts of names you can give it, but much different outcome this time on Hazard versus Juan Fran. And then in goal, Atletico had Jan Oblak, who was billed up as even better than Courtois or De Gea. Not on today's evidence, although there wasn't really much he could have done against Morata's goal. He possibly should have done a little better on the Batshuayi goal, but obviously we're not complaining. But still, it's pretty amazing actually still how Atletico can have kept that legacy of really, really good young goalkeepers playing for them, from De Gea to Courtois now to Oblak. So maybe Oblak in the near future makes his big money move to some other team. Best performance of the season so far says Tolu Aina, and I think we were all in agreement on that one. This is one to rewatch. It was a group game really, but it felt like a knockout game. Maybe it was just the nature of the winner, but certainly one to rewatch and savor and enjoy. Chelsea supposedly the less favored would be lucky to get a draw, and that's what I was thinking too. But from the first minute to the last, on the front foot, trying to get that winner, trying to get those 3 points. Fabregas was silent, is the comment from Pakwaku, if I'm saying that right. I wouldn't say quiet, but he was he stuck to his left-sided role for most of the first half, and then in the second half he started moving around a little bit more, and including dropping a bit deeper and playing like a deep-lying playmaker that we've been experimenting with more and more. I really like Fabregas more in a deeper role than I like him in as a forward, and which will lead to him being less obviously involved in an attack because he's not at the end of a ball, but he's the one starting them, and I think that suits his skill set a lot better. It's Fabregas. You're not gonna, if you're expecting Fabregas to run around and put in all the tackles like Conte or even Bakayoko, well, that's not really his game. But as one of the three midfielders, he doesn't need to do that. And in fact, one of the few times Atletico did have a chance, I think, was when Fabregas somehow got isolated 1-on-1 with I think it was Juan Fran on the right wing or our left wing. And yeah, that was a bit of a no contest there. Fabregas is not the player you want defending 1v1. So, it's a good performance. I don't think anybody had a bad day. Not even David Luiz, despite his little oopsie there. Should we continue with 2 up top versus City? So asked Dylan. I think we should actually go with the 3-4-3 against City to go for the counters, or to go for the ball over the top and an extra runner. So somebody like Pedro next to Morata and then Hazard on the left, I think is the way to go against City, because those opportunities will be there. They're going to play a high line, or they're likely to play a high line, unless Guardiola truly goes for something unexpected. So yeah, we need that extra runner at the top, I think, and that's where if Pedro's fit, then he's definitely the man to play that role, and he'll get his chances, and hopefully he can get a goal or two. Pedro likes to score in the big games, so it'll be a perfect time for Pedro to get a goal. Maybe Morata gets a goal too, and if we score a couple, then hopefully you can keep City to just one. And there's your win, and then there's international break, and we can sit back and relax for a couple weeks and marvel how far we've come from the 3-2 opening day loss to Burnley. Would you believe it? Lost to Burnley. So that's it's a bit of a trivia item. All right. I think it's getting fairly late in certain parts, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. Man, again, another comment on Costa. I really should have put the Costa picture up. Missed opportunity. But we'll always have Diego's head and hands, or one hand. That's we'll have that picture to remember him by, and get on with the rest of our lives. All right, so 2-1 Chelsea. It's the big win for on the day. We can look at the other scores actually real quickly here. United won against Moscow. CSK Moscow 4-1. PSG beat Bayern 3-0. Sorry, Carlo. Many are already saying Ancelotti is not going to last beyond the season. There's a result for you to confirm that. Celtic actually won 3-0 away at Anderlecht. Barcelona won 1-0 at Sporting Lisbon, and Juventus easily beat Olympiacos 2-0. And there's a strange result where Benfica lost to Basel 5-0. What the hell happened there? But the one we care about is Chelsea beating Atlético 2-1. Early in the day, Roma beat Karabakh 2-1. Karabakh almost came back in that game from 2 down, but alas, they fell just short. But Chelsea now, with 6 points from 2 games, easily in control. Roma second with 4 points, then Atlético on 1 point, and Karabakh on 0 points. The next 2 games for Chelsea are both against Roma, home and away. So a couple good results there, and we're assured of qualification. Even if we somehow manage to mess that up, Karabakh away on match day 5 should be 3 points. And so by the time match day 6 rolls around and home against Atlético, that probably won't matter much. Possibly for placement, but hopefully not even that. So then we can just give some other people a run out. And I say that despite getting to go to that game in person. So I'll be more than happy to see the likes of Musonda and Dujon Sterling get a run out against Atlético on match day 6. And Michy Batshuayi, of course, from the start, instead of just a late game winner. Michi. So, next up for Chelsea, as we've been talking about, will be Manchester City on Saturday, and I believe that's a late kickoff on Saturday, 5:30. Oh, apparently I have a package coming. Big Dog says the video is over. That's what all that barking means. So apparently I've got to go. So if you watched any of this, I thank you very much. If you watched all of it, then you're the best. Hopefully you all watched the game, because that was the best. And we'll chat with you after the Manchester City game.